It seems like every year during free agency, roster moves and player trades just get weirder and weirder, and this year was no exception. Huge names like Saquon Barkley, Aaron Jones, and Calvin Ridley all found homes with division rival teams, which would kind of be like releasing your Pokemon into the wild, only to find out that they've been hanging out with this asshole. So today, let's talk about each team and discuss who they're targeting in this year's draft. Be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more content like this. All right, y'all, let's start with the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs have been the team to beat for the last 5 years, mostly thanks to Patrick Mahomes, aka football's Kermit the Frog. This guy really knows his way around a pigskin, if you know what I mean. Patrick Mahomes has been a godsend for the Kansas City Chiefs, and because of him, they won last year's Super Bowl without a real wide receiver one. I think that the Kansas City Chiefs will probably use that 32nd pick in this year's draft to pick up someone like Xavier Leggett, the wide receiver out of North Carolina. The Las Vegas Raiders. I used to think that the Raiders were tough and scary, but the more that I watch them, the less scary they get. They might think they're intimidating, but really they look more like Edward Scissorhands than they do actual monsters. The Raiders have the 13th pick in this year's draft, and they really need help on that offensive line. They're eyeing someone like J.C. Latham from Alabama, but they might surprise us all and trade up for someone like J.J. McCarthy. Either way, it looks like it's going to be another tough season for the Las Vegas Raiders. The L.A. Chargers. If you want to talk about tough seasons, though, no one's going to have a tougher season than Justin Herbert and the L.A. Chargers. Justin Herbert was abandoned by his team just like Joe Dirt, and to make things worse, I think they might even share the same barber. The Chargers let go of Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett, and Austin Eckler. So if the Chargers want to win this year, they're really going to need to nail it in this year's draft. I think that they're going to go for Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State or Malik Nabers out of LSU with that 5th pick. However, Marvin Harrison Jr. is projected to go at pick number 4, so my money is on Malik Nabers to give Justin Herbert that immediate boost that he needs. The Denver Broncos. And of course, we've got the Denver Broncos. I was gonna write a joke about the Denver Broncos, but that would kind of be like putting a hat on a hat. The Broncos have the 12th pick in this year's draft, and despite their desperate need for a quarterback, there's a chance that Sean Payton will pass up on the quarterback spot altogether and pick up Kenyon Mitchell, the corner out of Toledo State. But the Broncos need more than just a corner. Rumor has it that they might actually trade up for J.J. McCarthy or trade down for Bo Nix. The Broncos haven't made the playoffs since 2015, so they're really hungry for some serious change. All right, y'all, let's move on to the AFC East. The Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins were the NFL's second highest scoring offense last season, but they lost in the wild card round of the playoffs to Dr. Eggman and the Kansas City Chiefs. This year, they're in the middle of no man's land with the 21st pick of the draft. Given the fact that their defense ranked in the bottom third of points allowed, I expect the Miami Dolphins to target someone like Byron Murphy II, the defensive tackle from Texas. Or they might pivot completely and go for someone like Jackson Powers, the center out of Oregon. This year, the Miami Dolphins are going to need to make decisions on the fly based off of necessity and availability. But anything can happen come draft day, so don't be surprised if they trade up to pick up some top talent. The Buffalo Bills. Speaking of trading up, last year the Buffalo Bills traded up to get Dalton Kincaid before the Dallas Cowboys could draft him. But this year, the Buffalo Bills don't really have much trading power to leverage. What they do have, though, is 10 picks in this year's draft. The Buffalo Bills have the 28th overall pick this year, and they need to get a wide receiver early after letting go of both Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU or Adonai Mitchell from Texas could be exactly what they need. So let's see what the Buffalo Bills decide to do with their offense this season. The New York Jets. The New York Jets are led by their head coach, Robert Saleh, and I'm being told right now that we have a rare photo of Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers negotiating Aaron's contract. Wow, that's not what I was expecting. Okay, the Jets have the 10th pick in this year's draft, and they're already looking pretty dang good. They fixed their offensive line this year by picking up Tyron Smith from the Dallas Cowboys, and now there's talk of the Jets actually trading that 10th overall pick to the Las Vegas Raiders for someone like Davante Adams. If the Jets don't trade for Davante Adams, though, I expect them to use that 10th pick to give Aaron Rodgers some additional protection. They could pick up a blocking tight end like Brock Bowers from Georgia, and then in the 3rd round, they can grab a slot receiver. But let's not forget, y'all, Aaron Rodgers is turning 41 this year, and the Jets need to start thinking about life after Aaron Rodgers. A late-round quarterback pick might also be in the cards for the New York Jets this year. The New England Patriots. The New England Patriots right now look more like the London Silly Nannies than they do an elite NFL team. They've gone from dynasty to just plain old nasty ever since Tom Brady left. The good news, though, is that they've got the 3rd overall pick in this year's draft, and they're going to have some good options whenever it's their turn to pick. Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and J.J. McCarthy. All 3 of those quarterbacks would be great additions to the Patriots roster, and after they make their first pick, the Patriots are going to need to find someone who can actually catch the football. So with the 3rd overall pick and the 2nd pick in the 2nd round, the New England Patriots have a real chance to improve their offense during this draft. All right, y'all, let's move on to the AFC North. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's take a look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin believes that he solved the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback issues by picking up Dumb and Dumber. And I know that sounds mean, but let's not forget that both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are prone to getting sacked by defenses. Both of those quarterbacks ranked inside of the top 5 for the most sacks taken in 2023. The Pittsburgh Steelers will be looking to pick up an offensive lineman, and all signs point to Talise Fuaga, the tackle out of Oregon State, or Graham Barton, the center from Duke University. If either of those players are still available at pick 20, then they'll be great additions to the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. The Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns won't have an early draft pick this year because they traded away 3 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and a 4th-round pick for Deshaun Watson, a.k.a. Bill Diddy Cosby Jr., who faced allegations of sexual misconduct by 26 women in 2021. I mean, just look at this guy. He looks like he sniffs his fingers after every snap. The Browns are going to have to wait until the 54th pick to make their first move, but by then, all of the top players should be taken. Luckily, they do need a wide receiver, and there are plenty of good wide receivers to choose from in this year's draft. The Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are basically the Thanos of the NFL. They're dominant, they're fearless, and they're purple. And just like Thanos, they keep getting stronger and stronger by adding pieces each year. This year, they signed Derrick Henry to their roster to boost their running game. So now the Ravens have a solid quarterback, running back, tight end, and a defense, but they still need a wide receiver. With the 30th pick in this year's draft, they'll probably aim for someone like Xavier Worthy, who just broke the NFL Combine record for the fastest 40 ever. The Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals have the 18th pick in this year's draft, which is kind of an awkward spot to be, but I guess it can't be as awkward as T. Higgins still trying to be friends with DeMar Hamlin after he literally killed him 2 years ago. The Cincinnati Bengals gave up the 2nd most yards to opposing offenses in 2023, so they could really use some help in the secondary. If they don't end up trading away their 1st-round pick, they'll likely target someone like Nate Wiggins, the corner from Clemson, or they could block the Steelers from trying to get Talise Fuaga and protect Joe Burrow at the same time by taking the offensive tackle at pick 18. All right, y'all, let's move on to the AFC South. The Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are coming off of a great year. Rookie head coach DeMeco Ryans and rookie quarterback C.J. Stroud are officially the greatest duo since Rick and Morty. The Texans made a huge move this offseason by picking up Stephon Diggs, but unfortunately for the Texans, they won't be getting a 1st-round pick this year, which is fair considering the fact that they had both the 2nd and the 3rd overall picks in last year's draft. The Houston Texans' first pick this year will come as the 42nd overall, but they do have a total of 9 picks in this year's 7-round draft. The Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars have Trevor Lawrence, also known as Handsome Squidward with hair. And he was once the former number 1 overall pick back in 2021. This year, the Jacksonville Jaguars have the 17th pick, but that could all change the closer we get to draft day. Now, the rumor mill is buzzing about the Jacksonville Jaguars possibly swapping picks with the San Francisco 49ers and trading up for someone like Brandon Ayuk. However, the Jacksonville Jaguars could also keep their pick and look for someone like Rome Odunze out of Washington or Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. The Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts are led by their head coach, Shane Steichen, who's basically just a caricature of Dak Shepard. This year, the Colts have the 15th overall pick, putting Steichen in an interesting position. Last April, the Indianapolis Colts addressed their quarterback issues by drafting Anthony Richardson. However, they struggled defensively, ranking in the bottom 3rd for points allowed. Colts fans are hoping that they draft a wide receiver to support the offense, but I think that the Colts really need to address that defensive side of the football. Drafting an elite corner prospect with that 15th overall pick could take that team to the next level. The Tennessee Titans. Can someone please tell me what is going on with Will Levis's veins? He looks like he got an enema and he's just absorbed all the water. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. That only works with beer. The Tennessee Titans have the 7th pick in this year's draft, and they want to beef up their offensive line. They might go for someone like Joe Alt out of Notre Dame if he's still available at 7, but even though they recently added Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard to their roster, losing Derrick Henry means that they need better protection up front to move the football effectively. It's going to be interesting to see the Tennessee Titans play without Derrick Henry for the first time since 2016. All right, guys, if y'all are still with me, be sure to hit that like button if you haven't already done so. And as a thank you for doing that, here's a picture of my dog, Bruce. Let's move on to the NFC. In the NFC West, the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals had one of the worst seasons in franchise history last year. They flopped harder than DC's The Flash. And at least The Flash was actually watchable. I would rather eat gravel than watch the Arizona Cardinals play football. This year, the Arizona Cardinals have 2 first-round picks at 4 and at 27, and they're very much needed. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the obvious choice here at number 4, while linebacker Peyton Wilson from North Carolina State could be an appropriate option at 27. But in my opinion, I think their main focus should be on protecting Kyler Murray. The Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks have made some changes this season, the biggest of which being the departure of Pete Carroll as the head coach. With the 16th pick in this year's draft, the Seattle Seahawks are painfully aware of the fact that they need to improve that offensive line. It might be a stretch, but if Troy Fautanu is still on the board at 16, then the Seahawks would be happy to have him there. Now, apart from an offensive lineman, the Seattle Seahawks could also be eyeing an edge rusher like Dallas Turner from Alabama. He's considered one of the top edge rushers in this entire draft class, and the Seahawks could really use the help. After all, they were among the bottom 10 teams in picking up sacks last year. The San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers have the 31st pick in this year's draft. They're coming off of the 2023 Super Bowl run, and they really don't need anything to improve this roster. They've done a great job of keeping their roster stacked on both sides of the football. But with rumors about Brandon Ayuk possibly leaving the team, they might be targeting a new wide receiver with that 31st pick. Still, it kind of feels like they're taking the auto draft approach here, and they're probably going to be focusing on just taking the best available player, and I personally don't hate that. The LA Rams. The LA Rams have the 19th pick in this year's draft. Their struggle with sacks last season means that they're eyeing a defensive lineman who can pressure the quarterback. If edge rusher Jared Verse falls to 19, then they'll snatch him up. Otherwise, expect the Rams to draft Liatu Latu out of UCLA. The Rams might also be considering a backup for Matthew Stafford, so don't be surprised if they use one of their later round picks to draft another quarterback. All right, y'all, let's move on to the NFC East. The Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys might be in trouble this year. They've lost Tyler Biadasz, Tyron Smith, Tony Pollard, Dorrance Armstrong, and even their defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn. Last year, the Dallas Cowboys were the highest scoring team in the NFL with 509 points. This year, that all could change if they don't find some players to fill in those gaps. The Dallas Cowboys are hoping to fix their roster issues by drafting an offensive tackle, specifically Amarius Mims from Georgia or Graham Barton out of Duke University. Oh, and there's one other thing that we need to consider here as well. Dak Prescott is in the final year of his contract, and he wants big money. For the Dallas Cowboys to fill in all of those roster spots, they're also going to need big money. So what do you guys think? Should the Dallas Cowboys draft a quarterback in this year's draft? Let me know in the comments. The Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles made big moves this offseason by adding Saquon Barkley to their roster, and now they're looking to strengthen up their defensive side of the football with the 22nd overall pick in this year's draft. Their top target is Clemson corner Nate Wiggins, but he might not be available by the time they get to pick since he's projected to go at pick 14. Alabama corner Terrion Arnold could also be a solid choice for the Philadelphia Eagles, but he's projected to go at the 15th pick, so it's tough to imagine that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to get exactly what they want in this year's draft. After going from Super Bowl contenders in 2022 to first-round knockouts in 2023, the Philadelphia Eagles really need to fix their defense to turn things around this year. The New York Giants. The New York Giants are facing some challenges, especially with Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback. If you've ever seen Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys, you might notice a weird resemblance here, both in looks and in their ability to play football. Now, granted, it's not all Daniel Jones' fault. The lack of wide receivers has been holding the Giants back for years. This year, the Giants plan to address that issue. With the 6th pick in this year's draft, I expect the Giants to select wide receiver Malik Neighbors from LSU or Rome Odunze from Washington. They could also opt for quarterback J.J. McCarthy from Michigan and say bye-bye to Bubbles. The Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders have had an amazing offseason. They basically picked up everyone that the Dallas Cowboys dropped and then some. The Commanders have the second overall pick in this year's draft, and they're likely targeting quarterback Drake May or Jaden Daniels. I personally like Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels might not be everyone's first pick here, but he's got the height, he's got the weight, he's got that weird elbow thing, and he's also got an impressive 40-4 touchdown to interception ratio, which is pretty solid. No matter which quarterback they decide to pick in this year's draft, I think that the Washington Commanders are in great shape heading into 2024. All right, y'all, let's move on to the NFC North. The Green Bay Packers are prepping for the 2024 NFL Draft with 11 draft picks in their arsenal. Their first pick at number 25 is crucial, and they're likely going to be targeting offensive tackle Graham Barton to beef up their offensive line. With multiple picks in both the second and the third rounds, they'll have a ton of opportunities to improve their roster. Given Green Bay's status as the youngest team last season, it's going to be interesting to see if they can take a step forward this year. Jordan Love is in the final year of his rookie contract, and his performance this year is going to be closely watched. If he can maintain his form from 2023, I think that the Packers are looking at their new franchise quarterback. The Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings have the 11th and the 23rd picks in this year's draft. The Vikings are in desperate need of a quarterback to replace Kirk Cousins, aka Vanilla Ice over here. And given the urgency, the Vikings might even trade up for a quarterback like J.J. McCarthy, which could be a smart move. While they still have stars like Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones, their quarterback situation is looking rough. If they don't grab a quarterback early on, they could try again with that 23rd pick, but they do have some defensive gaps that they need to fill. So let's see what the Minnesota Vikings decide to do with their 2 first-round picks this year. The Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions balled out in 2023, getting their first playoff win in over 30 years. Now, despite the Lions' offense ranking inside of the top 3 for total yards gained last season, their defense definitely struggled, landing in the bottom 10 for points allowed. So, the Lions are focusing on defensive players in this year's draft. Now, whether they'll use their first-round pick on a defensive player like Alabama corner Kool-Aid McKinstry, for instance, that depends on whether or not he's going to still be available by pick 29. Nevertheless, the Detroit Lions are heading in the right direction to improve their roster this year. The Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears have the number 1 pick in this year's draft, and Caleb Williams is going to be the first player off the board, assuming that nothing weird happens. Now, I don't know if it's the nail polish that he wears, or maybe it's the lip gloss, or maybe it's that pink clutch that he carries around, but something about Caleb Williams just gives me flags. Like flags of all kind of colors, like all kinds of flags. Like, if there was one flag that had all the colors on it, that would be the flag that represents Caleb Williams. Anyways, that's not the point. The point is that Caleb Williams is a really, really good quarterback. Last season, the Chicago Bears didn't have a strong offensive line, and Justin Fields spent way too much time running for his life. So I think that the Chicago Bears should use their second first-round pick at the 9th overall to grab another offensive lineman to protect Caleb Williams. And finally, we have the AFC South. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, holding the 26th pick in this year's draft, are likely eyeing an offensive lineman or an edge rusher. Last year, Baker Mayfield, the real-life Randy Marsh, led them through the playoffs as they beat the Philadelphia Eagles in round 1 and fell short to the Detroit Lions. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers re-signed Mike Evans, and most of the offense is going to remain the same. Adding more protection up front could give Baker Mayfield the time that he needs to get things going, but considering the fact that the Buccaneers gave up the 10th most yards in 2023, opting for a defensive pick at 26 might not be a bad idea. The New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints will start their draft this year with the 14th overall pick. The Saints need to have a good draft this year if they want to win games. Last year, Derek Carr struggled to move the football, and he got sacked 17 times in the first 6 games. 17 times. I wonder how many times he gets teabagged in Halo. It was a sack joke. The Saints could really use an offensive tackle to help protect Derek Carr, but they also need another wide receiver since Michael Thomas has been on the side of a milk carton since 2019. The Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons made some waves this season by picking up Kirk Cousins from the Minnesota Vikings. The addition of Kirk Cousins, who's been nicknamed Captain Kirk, to the Atlanta Falcons means that we're now going to be calling him Captain Falcon. And I can promise you that he's going to Falcon punch the crap out of a few teams in 2024. This year, the Atlanta Falcons have the 8th pick in the draft, and defensively, the Falcons have some issues that they need to resolve. I'm hoping that the Atlanta Falcons will pick up Iowa corner Cooper DeJean with that 8th overall pick to improve their defense. But even if they do pick him up, the Atlanta Falcons have been known to take generational talents and squander them. So let's see how the Falcons approach the 2024 season. And the last team on my list, the Carolina Panthers. Last year, the Carolina Panthers had the number 1 overall pick, and they chose Bryce Young, but they only managed to win 2 games with him. Bryce Young is a good quarterback, but he just doesn't have the pieces around him. The Panthers went out and picked up Deontay Johnson this year, so now Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen are going to be his main targets, but that's still not enough. To make things worse, the Carolina Panthers sold the farm last year to get that number 1 overall pick, and they're not going to have their first pick until the 2nd round this year. The Panthers are going to have to sleep in the bed that they made after last year's trade, so it looks like it's going to be another tough season for the Carolina Panthers in 2024. Well, football fans, if you stuck with me, you are amazing. Thank you so much for watching my content, and be sure to check out some of my other videos here on YouTube. Until next time, my name is Mario Manuel. You're watching Football Nation. Let's effing go.